Hello, everybody. It's Robert Whitaker with Hansford County Heritage and Journeys Through Time. Have any of you ever heard of a small community with a post office called Jeffrey, Texas? I have not heard of it. Of all the things that we have dug through and found in the museum lately, Holly and I, we found lots of evidence of communities that no longer exist in this area. Namely communities like Mulock, which I've outlined on our website already. There's other communities like Lucerne, Record, Farwell, Kimball. Well, I've never heard of Jeffrey, Texas until today when I listened to Carl and Peggy Archer, their interview that was done in 1996 by Carolyn Cummings. And they give a pretty detailed history of each of their families and how they got to the area. And it's very interesting. But one of the things that stuck out to me today was I did not know that there was a Jeffrey, Texas. It was a post office. It didn't last very long. It was straight south of Spearman, out kind of toward the Holt elevator is what I'm gathering as he described it, as Carl described it. This post office kind of moved around for Jeffrey, Texas. It was the Archers had it. The Holts at one point in time had it. The Kirks at one point in time had it. Sorry, I'm reading my notes here. So that was super interesting to me, and there's a whole lot more. Peggy Archer, or Peggy Garrett Archer, she's actually was a resident of Groover. She moved to Groover in 1929 with her family, and she tells great stories. Her grandfather knew Buffalo Bill. Her grandfather was also a cowboy for Charles Goodnight. Very interesting recording here today. So enjoy it, and hopefully we'll start doing some of our own interviews here pretty soon and getting those published. I just have to start talking to more people and lining this up, and we'll start getting some of these folks that we know today and their memories recorded. So anyway, have a great day, and thank you for listening.
We welcome you to Hansford Information on KRDS, and here with today's guest, your hostess, Carolyn Cummings.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Hansford Information. This is another in our series of Hansford Memories, and with us this morning are Carl and Peggy Archer, and today is June 4th, 1996. I almost forgot what day it was. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
And in visiting with you all, I think we're going to have a real good program because we're going to talk about grandparents and how you all came to be in Hansford County, and then we'll bring it all the way up to your children and grandchildren. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. Well, we're going to do that right after this message, and we'll be right back.
It's those troubadours of traffic drama, Vince and Larry, on the road again. You don't buckle up, you're on the road again. Right through the windshield and across the median. Buckle up or you're on the road again. Go ahead, Larry.
On the road again. Here comes a semi roaring down the highway. You can't move a limb. Now those 18 wheels are gonna teach the hard way. There's just one way. Stay off the road again. It really hurts to lose a pound of skin.
Oh, it's smart, it's smart.
Who wants a road burn from your toes up to your chin? Buckle up or you're on the road again.
Let's take it home.
Buckle up or you're on the road again.
A message from the Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Hansford Information, and this morning we're going to be visiting with Carl and Peggy Archer, and this year they were awarded the Citizens of the Year, and after visiting a little bit with them here, I can understand why. Let's start off with establishing who your parents and grandparents were, and let's tell some stories about them, because you've got some good stories on them. Carl, let's start with you. Everyone knows that your mother was affectionately known as Aunt Gertie Archer, and a very fine lady she was. Let's talk about her some and tell where you all came from, and just catch us up a little bit.
Well, my father's family came here in about 1898. He raised a family at Bell County. They left he had 10 or 11 children, and his wife died, and her niece came to look after the children, and he later married the niece and had another 10 or 11 children. So he had 21 children total. And he left Bell County and went out in the Abilene, Texas area, and I think left Bell County shortly after the Civil War. He freighted for the Confederacy while he was down in the Bell County area. They said that in the Abilene, Texas area, whenever the population grew to where they could see the neighbors smoke, they left there and came to Hutchinson County, which is on the Hutchinson-Hansford County line. And he supposedly brought 500 head of horses, and his sons would take a string of horses and go into Indian Territory or any place else where they might trade them and go on trading expeditions. And sometimes they'd come back with more than they left, but sometimes they come back without their horses and didn't bring anything with them.
You kind of got raided, huh?
But where he settled was down south of Spearman, where the Holt elevator is now. John Hutchison owns that section of land now. My mother's folks came from Oklahoma in about 1903, and they settled a mile east of where my father's folks settled. It's said that my grandpa Sheets helped bury the first man there, and his grave was the second one. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it's in the Holt Cemetery.
Go ahead and say it. It's in the Holt Cemetery? Okay.
Right. I was born there at my father bought my grandmother's place there, and we lived there for a while, and that's where I was born. It'd be 10 or 12 miles southeast or south of Spearman. Yeah, they had a post office called Jeffrey, Texas, and that's what's on my birth certificate is Jeffrey, Texas.
I never have heard of Jeffrey, Texas, so that's a new one on me.
Well, it's a post office that moved around to varied and sundry houses. I think the Kirks had it for a while, and I think the Holts had it a while, and they moved it. The Archers had it a while. It's just where whoever would agree to handle the mail, I guess, would be the one that would take it, or whichever one was more convenient for their mail riders. I don't know.
You said your grandfather, and I'm not sure which one you were meaning, helped organize Hutchinson County.
Yeah, John M. Archer helped ride to organize the Hutchinson County. It was not organized when they came settled here, and so they didn't know that they were even necessarily settling in one county or another. They were just here.
They just picked out a plot of land and decided that's where they wanted to be.
Right, they filed on it. They've got the papers they filed on, I think, 4 sections, and I think later sold the Jackson family some land, and sold maybe my grandpa Sheets some land.
Okay, now your mother was a Sheets. That's
Yes.
like y'all are related then to Claude across the street.
Of course.
Because both families are quite large families.
You bet. Yeah, they did other things besides watch television.
Oh, heavens, I tell you. Your father then was had
Bob.
some wagons, and it was your
Oh
father was
yes,
Bob
he
Archer?
traded. Yes, he traded cattle and horses and raised wheat and hauled principally used in the early days hauled his wheat to Texhoma, and they'd had a wagon yard there. I've heard him talk about staying in the wagon yard, and then they'd haul supplies back. At one time, in about 1926, I think he had there was not an elevator necessarily, but they'd order boxcars in. These wagons would hold 100 bushel, and they'd bring the wagons in, and they'd pit scoop. They had scoopers that they call pit scoopers. They'd just get in the wagon and just scoop till the wagon was empty. And they didn't have any scales. They just leveled the cars off, hold about 2 or 3,000 bushel, and that's the way they moved their grain after the railroad got to Spearman.
That's the way they gauged the amount, too,
Yes,
and
yes,
paid off
yeah,
from that.
paid off on that. Yes.
Now, Peggy, you were a Garrett, and let's bring people up to speed on your family. You were born in East Texas, east of Dallas.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk some about your family, because you were telling some very good stories about a great-grandfather that was a circuit rider, and a grandfather that knew Buffalo Bill. And I think in bringing Hansford histories and Hansford memories around it, it all forms together as to why we came here.
Well, my grandfather, my grandfather Garrett, when he was about 15 or 16, he had a little problem with his father, and so he ran away from home and went to Dodge City and worked as a cowboy and worked with Buffalo Bill and helped him form his show, his stage show.
The Wild West show.
Yes, but when he decided to take it to England, my grandfather chose not to go, so he came this way and worked on the Goodnight Ranch for a number of years until he received a letter that his brother had passed away in East Texas, and he needed to go back and help the widow look after about 5 children, and so he went back and helped her and later married her, and they had 3 more children. And in 1926,
Tell about your great-grandfather.
I'll tell you about my great-grandfather first. On my grandmother's side, he was a Methodist circuit rider, and he kept a diary, and he went to a Methodist conference in Atlanta, Georgia, and he said he rode horseback, or he went in a buggy, and he went in a wagon, and he later rode a riverboat.
What year?
In 1850 something, and he told some stories about said that he heard that there was a Baptist preacher on the boat, and that he was the man that wore buckskin, and so he looked for him, and he frequented the bar at night after they'd had their dinner on
This is the
the
Baptist
river.
preacher.
This is the Baptist preacher. My grandfather was a Methodist
Okay.
circuit rider, and my parents were born and raised in Kemp County, or around Pittsburgh, Texas, 135 miles east of Dallas, and we lived on a farm, and cotton farm, and had peach orchards, and then we times got hard after World War I, and we moved to Amarillo, and partially for my mother's health. She had hay fever really bad, and the climate was supposed to be better. And about 1926 is when we moved there, and then we moved on to Groover in 1929, and my father worked for the Groovers, the J.H. Groovers over there, and they had a Groover roller bearing manufacturing company. And I started to school there in 1929 when we moved to Groover, and there was not much in Groover. We had no electricity and no natural gas, and there were just not very many houses, and I lived there, and I went to school there, and I've seen a lot of changes in Groover, and I went to school there, and then Carl and I were married in 1939, and I moved to Spearman. I finished school at Spearman High School. I was just a junior in high school, and we ran off and got married because he was going back to Texas University. And we decided we'd get married and keep it a secret, but we were so dumb we didn't know that it had come out in the paper. So, but we were going to go back to college, and when I got out of high school, but we never did. We started having to work to try to, support just ourselves, and then in about 5.5 years, Mary was born, and then 4.5 years later, Carla was born. So that's kind of the story of our life. We've lived here for almost 57 years. We'll be married 57 years in August.
Alrighty. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and visit some more. We'll be right back after this message.
A commercial. Take off all your clothes. I'll wait. Okay, everything off? Good. Now, go and look at yourself in a mirror, front and back. Be thorough. Then come back. Oh, back already? Well, when you looked in the mirror, did you notice anything weird? How about your moles or freckles? Have they changed in shape or colour? Or do you see a new blemish that you didn't have before? Is it larger than a 1/4 inch or multicoloured? Is it irregular in shape? If so, you may have melanoma or another form of skin cancer. Left alone, melanoma will spread throughout your body and eventually kill you. That's why you should examine yourself regularly. And if you have any questions, see a dermatologist. Melanoma can be cured if caught early. Okay, you can put your clothes back on now. I won't look. This message brought to you by the American Academy of Dermatology.
Welcome back to Hansford Information. We're visiting this morning with Carl and Peggy Archer, and we've talked quite a bit about grandparents and great-grandparents. Now let's visit a little bit about you. You had just told us about when you all got married, and that you'd had the 2 children, but you all worked hard and went into business. And Carl, why don't you tell us some about your business ventures and what all you have done with those?
Well, we farmed a little and traded a few cattle, and we bought Speartex. We bought an elevator, a little elevator on the west edge of town from the Foxes and Gibners, and then enlarged it a little. We bought that in 1967.
I'd say you enlarged it.
Well, it went from 1 million bushel to 8 million bushel, but we later, a few years ago, we ran it for 25 years, and then leased it to Cargill on a term which they still have a few years to go. Me and a bunch of other guys, 7 or 8 people, went, well, it wasn't just guys, it was ladies and men, but we built Hansford Feed Yard and ran it for a while. We later sold it to a doctor out of Birmingham, Alabama. Seemed like he could do better with it 3,000 miles away than we could on top of it. I don't know. But, of course, we had a little problem in the 70s when cattle was losing $200 a head like they are now. Maybe it's turned around this time. I don't know.
I tell you what, it's kind of a speculation game, isn't it? It's kind of a tough
like
game to play.
Not a lot tougher than Las Vegas, but a little tougher.
Speaking of Las Vegas, I understand you like to go out to Las Vegas to the National Rodeo Finals.
Well, we have for the last few years, but tickets have got so difficult that I don't guess we'll be going this year. They're just nearly impossible to get, and if you can get one, it's in the nosebleed section.
Oh, way on up high.
Yeah, you have to take your oxygen with you as you go.
You need an elevator and all that to get up there. Now, we know, or I know that the rodeo arenas out here is named after, is it your brother?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did your family rodeo? Is that?
Yes, they did, especially Oscar and CP and RB. They were kind of the rodeo deals. I was kind of the ticket takers and whatever.
You're the organizer. Tell us some stories about that, or can you? Or
well, yes, they used to have rodeos over on the west side of the railroad track. Had a little deal there, and I've still got a lot of the books where these guys sign in, and it'd cost them 50 cents to $1 to maybe $2 to get into an event, and if they won it, why, they'd win from $5 to $15, and it didn't make any money for anybody, but it sure did. Everybody sure had a good time, and they'd have the rodeos seemed to me like 2 or 3 afternoons in a row, and once in a while, they'd have a rodeo dance, and everybody would kind of go down to there, and some of us that couldn't dance very well would kind of stand around and watch those that could.
I'm one of those watchers, Carl. I really am. Well, Peggy, you mentioned having the 2 girls. We need to talk some about them, because I'm probably sure that those 2 girls did some things that you've got some stories to tell on them. And by the way, Mary's the one that called and got you into this, and I had called Carl and asked him to do it, and Mary called and said, Dad's just got to do this. So get even with her. Tell some stories on her.
Well, I don't know that I better start that.
It could be dangerous to everybody else.
Could be dangerous. She's been pretty much of a live wire all of her life.
She's a good gal.
And she likes to be involved in everything, which she is, and that's kind of her life. She has, she married Perry Dixon in 1971, and he had a son, which is Monty Dixon. Most of you know him. And she had 2 children by previous marriage, and she was married to Tommy Lovett, and most everybody here knows the Lovetts. They lived here, and she had Mike and Carly, and so they have the 3 children, and now they have 5 grandchildren. Mike, her older son, has 2 sons, and he's going to medical school in Lubbock, and he will be moving to Amarillo and be finishing there, and then Monty lives out at Morse, and they have 3 children. They have Trey and Taryn and Taylor, and we have 5 great-grandchildren, and they're just great-great-grandchildren, and they really are great-great. And then Carla, she's married to Tommy Gumphrey, and he passed away in 1991, and she has 3 children, Catherine and Garrett and Julie. And Catherine is in Bangkok, Thailand, teaching school with a non-denominational school, and Garrett is in Texas Tech, and Julie will be a senior in high school next year. And so we're real proud of our daughters and our grandchildren.
I was out at Morse the other day. I go out to Paula Clemens'
Mhm.
place, and Seth was learning to ride the poles and do a little barrel racing, and some of the kids were out there, and she was showing me the horses, and Monty had lucked onto a horse named Taryn Dixon. I thought that was the neatest thing, that horse was out there, and said that I think it was Danny Womble called him and said he was at an auction and said, "You got to get this horse. It's named after your grandchild." I thought that was so cute. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us? Any stories that you can think of that you would like to share?
Well, I don't know. I can't think right offhand. I guess we should have practiced a little bit.
You're doing fine.
I don't really think of any. Do you think of something?
No, I
Carl,
don't.
We'd like to say?
Well, I'd like to say, I mentioned it before we went on the air, that I moved here in 70, and my father-in-law passed away 5 weeks after we married. And one of the first people that came to our house was Peggy Archer. And I think everybody in Spearman remembers her for a very good-hearted lady and very caring lady. And I think that needs to be part of this history.
That's right.
She was the first one to receive the Citizen of the
Of the Year.
Year award.
And then you followed years later in her footsteps.
Well, I didn't follow in her footsteps. I must have got mine for a different reason.
You got yours. Well, Carl, tell us a little bit about Mrs. Archer, because that's the only really contact I had with her, was that one time, and or a few other times, but that I know there's probably some stories that you could tell.
Well, there was 5 of us boys, and I'm sure we give her a lot of trouble. She was widowed in 1939 and lost a son at Metz, France in 1943 or 4, and then lost another son from a fire in 1947, RB, and then lost Oscar in 1955 in a car accident. So her life had a lot of tragedy in it, and I guess it just made her stronger. I don't know. She was sure a pretty strong lady.
So there's you and your brother Dan.
Dan, yes.
And Dan's at Perryton. Isn't
Perryton, yes.
Okay.
And my mother has 9 grandchildren, and she liked them all. She used to take them up to her ranch north of Groover and teach them to drive or swim or hike or cook hot dogs or ride horseback or whatever they wanted to do. Once she'd just let them do it. And,
grandmother would just help out.
Yeah, she really liked them, and some of them are not living in this area right now. That she has one grandchild lives in Florida, one lives in Arizona, and one lives at Lubbock, and I don't know where all, but
We have Bobby and that lives here, and Dan's children has one son, Scott, that lives in Britain, but his daughter and her family live down around Houston. And Bobby's family, everybody knows Bobby Archer. He's Oscar's son, and Bobby and Tony and Andrea and Matt, and I'm probably leaving somebody out. C.P. Charles Patton, the one that was killed in Metz, France, had one daughter, Maddie Lou, and she's the one that lives in Florida. And Dan has the 2 children, Scott and Dana Kay, and Who else do we have in our family?
That's fine. It's hard to remember them all. It really is, especially when you come from large families and trying to keep track of everybody. But I tell you what, we're basically out of time. If there's anything else you'd like to say, go right ahead.
No, I don't have anything
Okay.
I
else.
don't know of anything else. We'll probably think of a lot of
Well,
things
sure.
later.
I think everybody that's been on here has. Just as soon as we went off the air, several things came to mind. But we want to thank both of you for coming this morning and taking your time, and we sure appreciate it. We've been visiting this morning with Carl and Peggy Archer, and that is another of our Hansford memories, and we certainly hope you've enjoyed it. And everyone have a good day and a very good Heritage Day celebration time.